Welcome back to Snark and Spark. My name is Emily, and today is my March reading wrap up. Instead of doing a month-long vlog where I filmed my different reactions and stuff, I didn't do that. I had every intention to, and it just kind of got away from me where I'd finish a book and then be like, oh, I should go film. And then something would pop up, something would happen, and I just didn't film immediately. So here we are now at the end of the month, and instead I'm just going to give you my thoughts on all of the books I read this year in one little cohesive wrap up, and we'll call it good there. Let's dive right in. These are all of the books that I read. I have all of them except for two that I could not get my hands on a physical copy of. So when I get to those books, I will just pop the picture up on screen per usual. And I have them arranged from my worst rated to my favorite. And my favorite is over here, and you can't see it. It is just hidden off screen, and I'm okay with that. You probably know what it is. That's okay, you can guess. So first off, I've got The House of Brides by Jane Cockrum. This book is a 1.5. And I think that's me being generous. So this is it is marked as horror. I would call this, and I'm also kind of looking over here, I've got my reading spreadsheet pulled up over here. I would call this more of a thriller. We are following Miranda, who was a social media influencer, like a fitness social media influencer. She messes up basically by giving really bad advice and assuring people that her method, if you follow her diet, her plans, or whatever, if you do what she tells you to do, you'll be healthy and you'll lose weight and you'll be able to do everything you've ever wanted to do, which obviously is not true. And so she essentially gets canceled in this very, very public way that truly makes no sense. And all of her friends drop her and all of this stuff. And she is miserable, and she basically doesn't know what to do with herself. Her dad has tried to line her up with other jobs, and she is just miserable. She finds a letter that is addressed to her deceased mother that is from a distant family relation. Her mom was originally from England, wrote a book called House of Brides, all about her childhood home, detailing all of the famous wives of the men of this English manor house. And for whatever reason, her mom lost all contact, cut off contact with her siblings, her remaining family over in England, blah, 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 blah. They've kept them hidden from each other. We don't talk about the family in England. What does our main character decide to do? She sees this letter that was addressed to her mother and decides, I'm gonna go to this family in England. She does, but when she gets there, instead of just owning up immediately and being like, hey, technically I'm your niece, she lies and goes, yeah, hi, I'm here to be a nanny. And so then you spend this book with her pretending to be someone she's not. She's pretending she's not related to them at all, that she's not family, and taking care of her uncle's children. And meanwhile, uncle's wife goes missing. She just goes missing. And so now we're following this woman as she's trying to figure out what happened to her missing aunt. Why is her uncle not concerned? All while pretending that she's not their niece. It gets really convoluted, and unfortunately, it was just bad. The premise is great, right? It feels very it feels very Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. If you've read that classic novel of, the other Mrs. De Winter kind of thing, this young woman comes into this big English manor house and is trying to solve the mystery of the missing wife. That's very much what this, direct inspiration. I would have to look up to see if that's what the author was going for, but that's what it felt like. Very much had that feel to it, only very poorly done. There were a lot of plot holes. It was very convoluted, and ultimately the writing was just bad. It truly felt like when they were editing this book or whatever, that they cut whole chapters out or whole sections out and then squished the rest of it together and went, there's the book. Like, there are sections, it just feels as if you're missing something the entire time. Next is actually an audiobook that I couldn't get a physical copy of because my library does not have any physical copies of the book, and I don't know what that means, but it is The Angel Maker by Alex North. This book is where it began. I finished this book and then tried to film a clip of me talking about this book, and I could not do it because it was so weird. It is a book that is told in multiple timelines. It's definitely like a thriller. I think I called it like a crime thriller because that's what it feels like. Essentially, we are following a brother and a sister, older sister. Mom says, hey, your brother, who's struggled with addiction issues, has cleaned up his act and he's actually been in my life, but we hadn't wanted to tell you. Now he's missing again. So you need to go find him. So older sister decides she's going to go find her brother, and as she's trying to find her brother, we just kind of start stumbling onto all of these other connections. We learn that when they were children, her brother was a victim of a crime where he got attacked and was severely injured, and then after that, that led him down this path of addiction, and then how that relates to the present, right? He struggled with addiction. They were she cut him out of her life, blah, 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 blah. He's gone missing. And then we jump to other timelines of a different pair of brothers who grew up under what we learn is their father was a serial killer, and how they were raised with this, and how one essentially was his father's dedicated follower and took everything their father did to heart, took all his lessons and teaching because his dad was known as, the title of the story, the Angel Maker, had very religious overtones to his killings, things like that. So one son became into this like cult following and was like obsessed with this idea. The other son wanted nothing to do with it and ultimately was the reason why their dad got caught, kind of thing. So we're following this dual timeline that seemingly is not connected and makes no sense. We've got these two brothers who are the children of this killer, and then we've got present day where we've got this brother and sister duo where he's gone missing and she's trying to find him. It's this super weird thing and it just gets very convoluted, but it explores concepts and ideas of relating to like religiosity is a big thing, where like the serial killer dad was very religious and so things were an issue. The concept of like determinism, that, you know, everything you've done has been predetermined, how we're all connected and things like that. And so of course, as the story goes on, we do see that in fact, these storylines, though told in separate time periods, are interconnected. They do overlap. They are enmeshed with each other. So there is that concept of everything is determined, right? However, the writing ultimately let it down. I think the premise was so cool. The concept, the thought of this was so cool, that we're all connected, that one thing that may feel random and by chance is actually not, right? Like that concept is so cool. And I think it has been done before in other movies and films. So it's such a good idea, but the writing also felt really disjointed in this situation. We kind of jumped around. Sometimes it wasn't clear that we had switched time periods. There was also this really confusing thing. It's set in England, and I don't really know if this is an English custom or if this was just something that this writer was employing, where certain characters were referred to by their last name. When we met them, they were introduced to us by their last name, and that's what they were called for a majority of the time. And then suddenly it would switch to calling them by their first name, and it was supposed to be obvious that we were still talking about the same person, and it wasn't. So there were definitely moments where it was very, very confusing and unclear that this was supposed to be the same character, or that this character where we're using this first name is the same character as we're using as last name. That just, whatever. So ultimately I gave it a 3. Really liked the plot. I really liked it. I wanted to see where it was going. It got lost along the way. Then This is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I read this for the Read with Pride book club that my local library hosts. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous is a letter from a son to a mother who cannot read. Written when the speaker, Little Dog, is in his late 20s, the letter unearths a family's history that began before he was born, a history whose epicenter is rooted in Vietnam and spans to Hartford, Connecticut, and serves as a doorway into parts of his life his mother has never known, all of it leading to an unforgettable revelation. At once a witness to the fraught yet undeniable love between a single mother and her son, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous is also a brutally honest exploration of race, class, and masculinity, asking questions central to our American moment, immersed as we are in addiction, violence, and trauma, but undergirded by compassion and tenderness. It is much about the power of telling one's own story as it is about the obliterating silence of not being heard. With stunning urgency and grace, Ocean Vuong writes of people caught between disparate worlds and asks how we heal and rescue one another without forsaking who we are. The question of how to survive and how to make of it a kind of joy fuels this shattering portrait of a family, a first love, and the redemptive power of storytelling. It is gorgeous, don't get me wrong. Ultimately, I did give it a 3. The author is a poet, and that comes through in the writing. The writing itself is beautiful. And I listened to the audiobook of this, which is read by the author, which also adds just a layer, and I love doing that. And I do recommend listening to it if you want to. It's not a bad book. The book is fine. It was just a 3 for me because ultimately I struggled with the characters overall. The writing, absolutely gorgeous. If I had read it physically, I would have been like wanting to highlight passages, underline things, putting my little tabs in for quotes, because there were just several lines in here that were just so poignant and moving that it really did get me. But it's this long letter written by Little Dog, and he is discussing what happened in his childhood and the relationship between him and his mother and him and his grandmother and their relationships with each other, and just what it's like growing up as a Vietnamese American kid with his Vietnamese mother and American father. But it is very, very beautiful, very moving. Ultimately, though, I just kind of got lost a little bit with the characters. Some of them I couldn't get a clear grasp on, and that took away from it. Some of the plot points were just slow, ultimately. It is just this one kid's life. It is him telling his mom a story of his childhood up until now, where something happens and he has to face with this reality of like death and grief and everything. And it is a little slow. It is just a very character-driven novel. There's not a lot in terms of plot. There's not a lot of action. So there's that. Please be aware that it does discuss topics of grief and addiction, masculinity. Like I said, there is some toxic masculinity kind of thing is brought up, homophobia, internalized homophobia. There is also mentions of like PTSD and mental illness, and there is also there's at least one sex scene. I think there's a couple sex scenes, so just be aware. But it is beautiful, beautifully written. Next I have Out There Screaming, an anthology of New Black Horror. This was edited by Jordan Peele. It features 19 short stories, all written by Black authors. This was to get me out of my comfort zone. I don't typically read short story collections or anthologies. It's not my go-to. So I grabbed this. This was also Kayla from Books and Lala's pick for the Literally Dead book club, and there is a live show on her channel. So if you read this and you want to check that out, I did. But like I said, there are 17 different stories in here, and I will briefly give you my ratings of them. My statistical average ended up being a 3.1. The overall consensus from what I've gathered from this book is that most people did not find it to be horror. It was a lot more speculative. It was a lot more sci-fi. And several people did not finish it from what I can gather. The overall conclusion is it's not horror. That being said, there are a few things that are excellent. So let's go through it. Reckless Eyeballing by N.K. Jemisin. I gave it a 1. I hated it. It has ACAB vibes, and I didn't like it at all. That seems to also be kind of a consensus that the story sucked. We are following this cop who is an asshole, and he starts seeing eyeballs everywhere, and he thinks that they are showing him bad people, and he takes it upon himself to like punish those people. Eye and Tooth by Rebecca Roanhorse. I gave this a 5. I really, really liked this story. We are following like a brother and sister like monster hunting duo, and it's really good, in my opinion. And for what I'm going together too, any of the stories that I gave like 4.5 to a 5, I will be checking those authors out as well, because I really liked the way it was written. I liked their style, so I'm definitely intrigued by these people and will be going back. And I did watch Kayla's live show, and she said with some of them, like she's read some of the authors before, so like if you did like these stories, check out their writing, because you'll more than likely like their other stuff. Wandering Devil by Cadwell Turnbull. I gave it a 2. It was a I Met the Devil story. It was okay. It kind of was a letdown compared to the other things. Invasion of the Baby Snatchers by Leslie Neka Arama. I gave it a 2, and I just wrote, am I just dumb? I didn't get it. Aliens have come to Earth. They're getting people pregnant. Then we have The Other One by Violet Allen. This is a 2.5. I've got meh, a little weak, to be honest. This is like a woman messaging her boyfriend, but instead his like new girlfriend is the one responding. It gets weird. I've got La Sarine by Aaron E. Adams. That was a 4.5. I said it was a solid tale. This is all about a trio of sisters, and they meet like a woman in the water, and she essentially is making bargains and things like that. And so it's about how the sisters, and like one of the sisters gets kidnapped and so on and so forth. It's very interesting. I really enjoyed it. The next story is The Rider by Tananarive Due. 5 out of 5. Fantastic story. We've got set in the 60s during like the Freedom Riders movement, and we've got these 2 girls that climb onto a bus, and of course the white people decided that they were going to mess with these girls, but things go awry, and it was really good. I really, really liked this one. We've got The Estate by Justin C. Key. I gave it a 1. I said I don't get it at all. I don't even know if I can tell you what it's about. It's like AI people that have been made, and there's this ominous person called the Collector. It was weird. I don't get it. Didn't like it. We've got Pressure by Ezra Clayton Daniels. Gave it a 2. Said it was not scary at all. Essentially, we're just following this like family dynamic of like cousins that are back at a house for like a family get together, and some weird atmospheric pressure thing happens. Dark Home by Nnedi Okorafor. I'm so sorry, because I know some of these names are not right, and I want to do my best. Dark Home, though, 3.5. I enjoyed it. We're following like a woman who recently lost her father, and so like has gone to Nigeria to bury him. She disrupts the funeral service, and then she kind of gets haunted after that. It was really, really good, but then the ending was really unsatisfactory. It was great until then. Flicker by L.D. Lewis. I gave that 5. I said so good, it actually gave me chills, and I do remember this. This one essentially is following a young woman and her friends, where every so often everything just goes blank, and everything goes black, and there's nothing. You can still hear, you can still like feel, but you can't see anything at all. Everything just goes black, and this starts happening, and And at first it's really short amount of time, and then it gets longer and longer. And so we get these periods where it tells us. So it's like, it opens with 21 seconds. So then we know that it's, and you're like, okay, something happens, then 3 minutes and something. And so as you're going through, you're like, oh, and you get that that's telling you how long that the vision is going black, and it gets messed up. And I really enjoyed it. The Most Strongest Obeah Woman of the World by Nalo Hopkinson, 2.75. The beginning was the best part. We're following this woman who essentially is trying to get rid of like a devil in the village, but then attaches herself, the Obeah woman, they get attached to each other, and then they have to like try and separate themselves from each other. The Norwood Trouble by Maurice Broaddus, 5. Love me a good haunted house, like, or haunted wood story. And that's what this was. We've got people, we've got like a city, a black town. They are fine. They're doing great. And then of course the white people want to come and take that from them. And they're like, don't worry though, the woods will protect us. And then the woods protect them, let me tell you. And it was so good. A Grief of the Dead by Ryan Amilcar Scott, 2. It started off really strong, but then it just didn't go anywhere. And we're following like someone who's lost his twin brother and then loses his sister, and he essentially doesn't know what to do with himself. And there are these things called screechers. It was weird. A Bird Sings by the Etching Tree by Nicole D. Sconers. It was 3. I gave it a 3. It was good. I just wanted more from it. I could see this one being fleshed out to be a bit more like a novella, and I think it would do really, really well. I don't think that this concept worked as a short story. We're following like essentially 2 ghosts who are stuck on a particular stretch of highway, and they start killing people. And it's like they've made like a bet with each other where whoever wins gets something. So you've got one woman, she's stuck there, she can't leave, but if their like bodies or their forms get damaged, she can like heal them. The other one can leave but can't like heal herself, so even though she's already dead, her form is like decomposing as well. So they've made a deal where it's like whoever gets to a certain number first, the other one will like teach them their secrets. Then we have An American Fable by Josiah Burke. It was a 3.5. I liked it well enough where if they made it into a book, I would definitely read the book. We're following like Noble, and he's like traveling, and essentially he meets these like super powerful figures who tell him he has like a destiny. And again, same thing, super great concept, but it wasn't written in a way that a short story does it justice. Then we've got Your Happy Place by Terrence Taylor. This was a 4. I really, really liked it. They were like, it was a creepy story, but it definitely gave away the twist way too soon. Following this guy who is essentially stuck in a simulation, and he is like repeating the simulation over and over and over again because the truth of what his actual situation is way too much worse. Sure, we'll go with that grammatically incorrect statement. We have Hide and Seek by P. Jelly Clark. This was a 4.5. It was pretty good, but it could have been better. I think it could have been stronger. We spent a lot of time in the build up, and so then when the action came, it was over in like half a page, which is really disappointing. It started off like, it did one of those where it starts you at the climax and then it like backs you up to tell you how we got there. So then when we get back to it, it's just over. And I really want more, but essentially it's like these 2 little boys are playing hide and seek with their mom, and when she catches them though, she's like really mad that she's caught them and is like, you have to do better, you can't let me catch you. And then it implies that there's like money or magic, and that his mom is an addict to this like magic stuff, and bad things happen when she gets too much magic. And then the last story is Origin Story by Tochi Onyebuchi. This is told as like a play, and it's these 4 white boys talking to each other. I gave it a 1 because I just really didn't get it. I did not understand what was happening at all. It's definitely this dialogue, like I said, between these 4 white boys, but they're talking essentially, I think it's supposed to be how they're trying to touch on the fact that they have privilege, white privilege, and they're mad because they think they're being oppressed by people of color. I don't think I really got the message of this story, and that's disappointing for myself because it makes me feel dumb. And I'm not dumb, but I feel dumb. And I wish I understood and I had the words to describe what that actually was about. But that was all of them. So again, statistical average is a 3.1. Meh. Next, I've got The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. This is a standalone novel. It is the April pick for Magical Stitches, so it should be being read this current month in April. I read it a month ahead, obviously. I gave it a 4. I've already said what this book is about. We follow Hazel and Ben in this small town of Fairfold where humans and fairies mix, sometimes to disastrous consequences. But it's really good. I liked this one a lot. I remembered it the most, I think, out of some of the other standalone books that I've read. I had the more clear picture of what was going on. I could not remember the ending all the way, which was kind of nice rereading it because I could not remember where it was going or how it would end. And that's okay. I still really did enjoy this book. So yeah, 4. Next is another audiobook. I could not get my hands on a physical copy of it right now because it is brand new. It just came out in 2024. It is a 2024 release, and that is The Warm Hands of Ghost by Catherine Arden. She has written several other like children's or middle grade stories, The Bear and the Nightingale series, The Small Spaces Quartet, which I've read the first one of. This is her like adult, I don't know if it's her debut, but it's an adult book, and I gave it a 4. This ended up being my read a book with a gold cover instead of Fourth Wing because I was running a little low on time by the end of the month. And I still wanted to prioritize my Magical Stitches group since I run that group, and that was kind of important to me. It follows a brother and sister set during World War I, and they are both in the military. Her younger brother has enlisted in the military, and she is a nurse. So they're both at war at the same time. They're in Belgium, and essentially when we have met up with her, she is given a trunk of her brother's belongings and is told he is dead. She decides that she needs to figure out what happened to him because she doesn't have answers. She believes he's dead. She just wants to know what happened. This is dual timeline and dual POV. So then when we are not with the sister, we are with her brother. And so we get kind of transported back in time to his POV where he is telling us what happened to him. And turns out he's not dead, but something does happen and they have to go on this whole thing where they need to find each other. And it also is kind of a I met the devil story, and I enjoyed it. It does have quite a bit of blood and violence because it does take us into the war. We do see her as a nurse dealing with these men, and I think it also does a really good representation of PTSD. Like, she's come back from the war, whenever she hears a big sound or a car backfiring or whatever, she does have issues. The problem I had with it is that it just felt a little too long. We hit a point where there was like a big climactic moment. I was like, cool, the story's wrapping up. And I looked at my phone because I listened to this as an audiobook, and there was still like over an hour left. And I was like, what are we doing? Where are we going with this? It is really good. There is a good little twist in there that I couldn't quite pinpoint. I wasn't sure where we were going with this, like what felt like a secondary storyline that ended up being the major conflict. And I did really like that. I liked that this like secondary character became something else. I did at a moment where I audibly went, whoa, while I was sitting there listening to it. My husband walked in and I said, whoa, and he was like, what? And I was like, there's a character in there that I described to him that seems very similar to me. And then this character does something that felt very out of the norm for her. But then when we put it into perspective, I was like, this would be me if something happened to Caden. And he went, yep. And I was like, exactly. That's why I went, whoa. Moving on. This is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is a 4.5. This was my family book club pick. My sister-in-law picked it for our family. This is following Clementine and Ewan. Clementine's aunt has passed and has left her apartment. And Clementine has moved in. Her aunt has said the apartment is magical. And sure enough, it will transport you in time. It will take her 7 years into the past. 7 years in the past, she meets Ewan, who was subletting her aunt's apartment for a summer. And so their paths cross during this time, which then opens the door to her going, do I meet this man in the future? Blah, 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 blah. What am I doing with my life? Everything like that. It's a cute little love story. But it also tackles topics of grief and like the loss of a loved one, which I really strongly like connected with, considering the loss of my dad. So the grief that Clementine is experiencing over the loss of her aunt was very real and very raw, and I think it was really well done. It's set like 6 months after her aunt's death, so I definitely remember that time period as well, and just how things feel during then. Super cute though. It definitely had me like grinning, kicking my feet kind of things. I didn't kick my feet, but it had me grinning a few things at a few scenes. It also was like, it did not do any of the like miscommunication tropes, because I hate that. I actually really liked this. The like stuck in different time periods was actually fine, but I did really, really enjoy it. And I was definitely rooting for Ewan from the very, very beginning. So I liked this a lot. I think you should check this out. And then last but not least is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This ended up being a 5-star read for me. If you remember at the end of my last like TBR or like whatever, I had said that it felt really slow and I really wasn't getting into it. And then it picked up. I was kind of stuck still at the beginning. It picked up so much. After we get to the island, when we get to the Cerulean Sea and we get to the orphanage here with Linus and the kids, it picked up and it just changed the trajectory, and then I get it. I got it so hard. I understand why people are obsessed with this book, why they love this book, because I also am obsessed and love this book. We are following Linus as he goes to this orphanage, and we meet Talia and Lucy and Arthur and Zoe and Phoebe and Sal and what's his name? Theodore. And then, oh no, what's his name? It makes me sad. My little snail friend. What is snail friend? Oh, it'll come to me later, and that's fine. But we're following them, and they are the best. I love them. I would lay down my life for Lucy. I would do anything that Lucy wants me to do. That's fine, because I love him, and he is the most perfect little child in the world, and you cannot convince me otherwise. I basically told my husband the entire plot of this story just so that I could talk to him about it, because I needed to be able to talk to him about it and read him passages, because I just love it. I am obsessed. I totally get it. I did really, really like it. This one definitely had me grinning ear to ear, swinging my feet, kicking my feet, happy as a clam. Loved it so much. I think I need a little bit more of these like cozy fantasy kind of things in my life, because they do make me really happy. I sit here and I tell myself that I don't like them, and then I read them and they get like 4.5 5s. So I think I need to increase my like kind of cozy reads, because I'm learning that I like them. So that's it. I've had to film this in like 3 parts because my phone keeps telling me I don't have any storage, and that's really, really annoying. So hopefully I can edit this all together and make it cohesive. Thank you all so much for watching. Up next, you will get a quarterly life check-in from me because I have a lot of things that I want to talk about, not just book-wise. I do want to give like my book stats for like the quarter, but also I want to talk about stitching, what's going on with stitching and me, what's been going on in my life this first quarter of the year, and some changes that I want to make to the channel going forward. So that will be coming really soon. Thank you so much for watching if you're still here. Happy doing whatever it is that makes you happy doing. Be easy with your hearts.